Today on Your Money, we're taking the show on the road. We're here at US Bank Stadium, home of the Minnesota Vikings, for the Minneapolis Home and Remodeling Show to give you some money-saving advice to fix up your home. Welcome to Your Money. I'm your host, Gordon Severson. For most people, your home will be the biggest investment of your entire life. And today we are giving you some advice on how to protect that investment and also add some extra value to your home. We are here at the Minneapolis Home and Remodeling Show, and for this first segment, we're going to talk to the show manager. He does shows like this across the country, and he has some great advice on how to get started with your project. Tell me a little bit about this show. It's kind of a good way for people to start thinking about projects in the spring and summer, right?
Yeah, so some people that come, they have a project in mind. Other people are literally just coming for some inspiration or even a day out. I tell people that do come, that have that plan in mind, come with pictures, come with blueprints, come with those really specific questions where you can potentially get a live quote or schedule an appointment for them to come and visit your home a few weeks later.
What are some of the most popular projects that you hear in passing or see people working on at different booths?
So what we hear, and I think most of our consumers are smart consumers too, because they know that kitchens and baths probably add the most value to your home. So those are the most popular. Then there are the ones that they don't want to spend the money on, like we're like, oh, we need a new roof, or the gutter's broken, or like the windows are kind of old. So those that don't necessarily have a huge change to your home aesthetically, but add value, add efficiency, and are just good because you don't want the creaky door, you don't want the leaky window. So,
are there any projects that you've come across that just really stood out to you as unique or odd? You're like, I never would have thought of that as a project that someone would do at their house.
Oh, wow. There's a company here that's an app. So it's not necessarily a project, but it's a hail tracker for people that maybe just got a new roof, and they can. So outside of weather, you can literally track the weather and then say, hey, we got hail in our neighborhood. That's when you should then contact your insurance company. I never thought you would ever need that, but it's doing well and people apparently using it.
What's it like to be here and to be able to see a lot of these people that are just like getting the information they need, and it just must be a good feeling for you and your team to know that like you're being able to connect people with the experts and the questions answered that they might have.
Yeah, we've had a good consumer that comes when they have things in their hands and they have like a notebook and it's full of scribbles and they're grabbing literature from each one of the booths and they hopefully leave with a smile on their face. So yeah, it's a good feeling knowing that we've helped my neighbors.
And I'm sure these kinds of events help people out where instead of like calling a bunch of companies for quotes, they can kind of go, it's almost like a grocery store. You're just kind of shopping around and getting quotes left and right.
It's a grocery store, but also kind of like speed dating. So anyone can really go online and like, I'm going to schedule 8 appointments, but you don't know who is coming to your door, right? So this is a good way to kind of have that pre-interview, like, oh, I liked this person at the show. Like, I wouldn't mind them coming over to give us a quote. Like, so it's a good kind of security measure and just kind of a comfort level thing to actually get to meet the person that could be working on your home for a considerable amount of time.
So if there's a show in your area and you're looking at a project, it might be a good thing for you to consider, a good way to find a bunch of companies.
Yeah, we have home shows all across the country.
A lot of the companies here are preparing for a busy spring and summer because with the way that the home market is right now, they're expecting to see a lot more homeowners fixing up their homes instead of buying bigger homes to fit their needs. We spoke with a few realtors who shared their insight into what they're seeing right now with the home market.
In this neighborhood in Crystal, Mallory Johnson knows this home will eventually be sold. Johnson, a realtor with the Brittany Shull team, has seen the ups and downs homeowners have experienced lately.
Things have changed dramatically over the last 3 years since I started.
Many of those stopping buyers in their tracks.
Then interest rates went up and everybody stopped buying. It went up into the 8s and people paused.
Add in high prices and record low inventory.
It was the lowest I've ever seen. It was, it was really bad.
And this is a problem that many home buyers and their realtors are seeing now.
It is pretty competitive in the first, second, and first, second ring suburbs.
Andrew Wieberdink with North Coast Realty has seen those same challenges. The National Association of Realtors said last week that sales of previously lived-in homes were the lowest they've been in 30 years. That doesn't come as a surprise for Wieberdink.
People started to shy away from buying homes because everybody thinks or thought that interest rates were going to come down. Not realizing that the rates that we had were just unprecedented and not normal.
But there is hope.
The other silver lining is that we've seen a big change in rates. They've gone from over 8% to more like 6.5%, 6.75%-ish, and that has had a meaningful impact on affordability.
Back in Crystal, Johnson is hopeful as well, hoping for a change for those looking for their dream home.
I'm optimistic. I'm keeping my hopes up that the interest rates are going to kind of stay in this like healthy range. I think as long as we hover there, we're going to be good.
Speaking of homes, our next guest earns a living working on mansions, but she says you can add a lot of value to your home with even the smallest of projects. Here's her advice on remodeling your home. And our next guest fits right in with the theme of the show, your money. We're all about saving money, and it's in the name of your show, Bargain Mansions, right?
Yes, exactly. I love saving money.
This is Tamara Day. You host a show on HGTV, and you have a little bit of money and saving money in the back of your mind when you're doing some of these projects.
Always. Well, and also equity. Like I'm always thinking, how can we add value to the home? Like not just make it beautiful, but is this actually adding equity to the homeowner's budget?
And you were saying before, when we were chatting, before we started rolling, is that the words bargain and mansion are both subjective. Tell me about that.
Well, you know, a bargain to my kids is definitely a different bargain than it is to me, right? So everybody's budget is different, and so finding a way to design your home in a way that fits your budget and your bargain is what my goal is.
And mansion, your home can feel like a mansion if it's your palace, it's your place that you feel good about.
Exactly, and there's no set determining mansion, right? Like somebody in New York City living in 1,000 square foot apartment is gonna think 1,000 square foot is small, is big, right? But you move up to 2 and you're like in a mansion all of a sudden. So you've got a lot of room to wiggle with both words.
So you've gone into a lot of homes, a lot of projects. What would you say are some things that you've encountered that maybe didn't notice right away, or you noticed right away because you have the training, that people might not know to think about or look for when they look at a new house or a used home?
You know, I think one of the things that I like to do is I walk through a space, I think about how I would flow through it in real life, and then I look at it on paper. I want to see the floor plan on paper and think about how can these walls move to make it more functional. And in the space you can see potentially where all of the structures are, but looking at it on paper changes everything. And so looking with an eye of how can we make this function better is always good for resale.
Do you think a lot of people are intimidated by like knocking down a wall or changing the structure? Because I know for me, when I first bought my first home, that wasn't even something I ever considered as a possibility.
Right.
It's changing a wall.
Oh gosh, I do think that is an intimidating thing. I mean, it seems scary to knock down a wall. Is it all falling down? Mm-hmm. But the reality is if you are just structurally aware and you get an engineer out to tell you what walls are structural, there's a lot of walls in your house you don't need and you can get rid of. But the other thing is, everything is fixable, right? Like, it is not gonna be the end of the world unless you knock the whole roof down. That you removed a wall, it can always be built back. So take the wall out, get creative, use the space that you've got in a way that functions well, and you're gonna be happier in your home.
What are some projects in the house or rooms that people can focus on that can really add some good value to their home by sprucing that up or adding something to it?
You know, kitchens and baths always sell a home. And so I love to invest in a beautiful kitchen that functions well. It's really important that when you're thinking about it, you don't just go for trends, you don't go for, you know, the basics. You got to find someplace that's the sweet spot in the middle. So getting good aesthetics in the space is really important. And I think one of the things that I do differently is make my home memorable. I like to make spaces that people remember when they're walking through, because you might go see 20 houses and how are you going to remember this one house? And I want it to be mine. And so I like bold, I like things that are unique, especially in spaces like mud spaces, laundry rooms, half baths, where you go back home and you think, man, I loved that one house that had this mud room. Remember, it was bright yellow, and it makes it memorable, but it's not full commitment when it's not the main spaces.
Yeah, I think it's funny that even something like a mudroom, it's such a small area, but for some people that just like triggers something. They can see their family there, they can see their kids sitting there, and it like creates a feeling in them with that house.
Well, and a laundry room, nobody likes doing laundry, right? So do laundry rooms in a way that makes it feel fun to be in that room. You can go bold, you can be colorful, do lots of wallpaper, great lighting, and it's a small commitment, small space. You don't have a lot of cost in doing that, but you make a lot of impact and make your day-to-day happier.
If someone's buying a home, what are some problems that they might not think to look for and then they get the inspection, or maybe even an inspection might not see it? What are some things like that people should be thinking about?
I mean, you nailed it. You've got to get an inspection. You need to do all the inspections, the plumbing, you've got to look at everything. But the things that I think people don't think about is like, oh, it's pretty, let's do this. And they get into their kitchen and then they're like, oh, this feels weird. My fridge is too far away, or my dishwasher's not right here, or my silverware drawer is across the room. Like, walk through the kitchen with the intention of like, how would you make a meal? Like, feel it, experience it, and just kind of see how it works and if it's going to actually work for you and your family.
That's functionality. I mean, you're doing a lot of cooking, you're moving around, and if it doesn't fit your needs, that's a great idea.
Yeah, so live in it. Pretend to live in it while you're touring it. See how it feels to actually cook a meal. Open the fridge, open the oven, see how you walk past the oven. People don't really think about that, but when the oven is open or the dishwasher is open, can you still walk past it? Can you walk past your fridge with it open? I run into houses all the time where the fridge is open and now you can't walk through the kitchen, or the mud space door is open and it hits the refrigerator door. Like, think about the flow, and that's really important.
You can also save a lot of money on the interior of your home with retro furniture and other vintage accessories in your home. Our next guest is the queen of vintage. She says it's cool to go to the thrift store and buy used. Here at Your Money, we're always on the hunt for a great deal, a bargain. We love thrift stores, and that's right in your wheelhouse.
It is.
This is Virginia Shamley. She is the author of Big Thrift Energy.
Yes.
I'm sure money saving is all about what you do.
Yeah, I love to save money and also spend a little bit of it when I go to the thrift store. I really have found a niche, I think, in finding really valuable pieces that I think most people don't often equate with thrift stores or antique malls, because I think there's this idea that, you know, when you shop for antiques, you're looking for old clown paintings and quilts, and the truth is you can find really incredible designer pieces, and you don't have to break the bank to style them in your own home, but you can also flip them and sell them later on if you get sick of them.
And vintage is cool now. There's a look.
Vintage is cool. It's back.
One thing I think there's, and I was just talking to my wife about this, is that when it comes to vintage and retro, there's a fine line between what's cool and vintage and retro and what's just old and junky, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to how you style things, right? If we're talking about home decor, certainly there is a risk you run of getting into mid-century modern furniture, for instance, and suddenly your home looks like Don Draper's house or the set of Mad Men or something, right? So I think it's fun to sort of style it and juxtapose old with new and mix postmodern 1980s with mid-century 1950s. Similarly, if you're shopping for, you know, vintage clothing, you can wind up looking a bit costumey if you're sort of picking everything from one decade. So I always tell people to sort of mix and match.
Is there a certain time period you should avoid? Like, if it's something from like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, has it not crossed into vintage, or can you still borrow from that age range?
So I think 20 years is technically the cutoff. And I will also say, especially when it comes to furniture, you know, in recent years, we have seen a really big trend towards fast furniture, which is similar to the fast fashion idea. If you go to a big box store, you'll see furniture you might have to assemble yourself, that's made out of like a lesser quality material like plywood, and those are just not going to stand the test of time. So while they seem affordable in the short term, you have to replace them in 2 years, right? And you can go to a thrift store and you can find something made, you know, decades ago that has lasted for 100 years and will probably last another 100 years, and it's probably even less expensive than that piece you have to assemble yourself.
Here at the home show, we're talking about big projects, big budgets, and new things, but what I like about your approach is that you can add some great beauty to your home with something that's affordable, something that's new, something that's old. What are some good ideas for people that want to spruce up their home with something that's vintage?
So I always tell people to look for materials. I think this is a great idea, especially if you're really new to shopping at a thrift store or an antique mall and you don't really know a lot about design. You know, just look for those really high quality materials. Marble, lucite, brass, chrome. These are materials that in their raw state are very expensive, right? So it stands to reason that a piece of furniture made out of those is more valuable, will last a lot longer. I found a really great set of brass chairs. It was 6 brass chairs. I paid $100 for them at the Salvation Army. They're going for $9,000 online. They're like Mastercraft chairs, and they didn't have any markings or anything on them. I was just able to deduce from Googling and reverse image searching and all of that. So yeah, I think look look for materials, and always check to make sure that it's a functioning piece. That can sometimes be a problem you run into at the thrift store, right? You want to make sure it's a chair, it has all its legs, it has its arms, it isn't something that you have to fix, because if it's a big project, oftentimes it will end up just sitting in your garage.
And I'm sure the reason you can find these deals is because not everyone has the same ideas or visions, where someone has this in their home or they got it from their grandparents who passed away, and they're like, I don't know how I can incorporate this into my home, so they throw it at a thrift store. But if you have a vision, you can turn that into a really cool look.
Yeah, and I think a big thing I do is I go constantly on Pinterest and Instagram, and I'm saving images with items that I think I might find something like that at a thrift store. And so I already know what it might look like styled in a home, and that sort of helps me, because the thing about thrifting is that the work is not done for you, right? A lot of us are used to going to an IKEA or a West Elm, where you know exactly what the coffee table will look like because it's styled in a room with a couch. At a thrift store, it is not like that. The coffee table might be upside down or missing a drawer or something like that. So you have to be able to sort of see outside the walls of the thrift store and think of what it might look like in your home, or what it might look like if you painted it or sanded it or stained it, or if it's a piece of art, maybe if you just reframed it or painted the frame. So it's all about being able to use your imagination a bit.
And when you were saying the time period of 20 years, I also think that's good to keep in mind, because I feel like that's probably about the time that some mainstream products got to be a little bit lower quality.
Absolutely.
More particle board and not heavy wood. So that's probably something to keep in mind. If you're looking at a thrift store, there are those cheapo products out there that aren't made very well.
Absolutely, and always, if it's a piece of furniture, look underneath, look in the drawers. If there's a marking, it might be the brand, it might be made in China, it might be made in Italy, which is a sign that it's probably made by an artisan, whereas made in China might be a sign that it's made in a factory, for instance. So there are definitely context clues you can use.
I know some people might say you're going too cheap by going to a thrift store or going online, but we are giving them permission to go there, find something cool, and add some flavor to it.
Absolutely, and it's funny, since my book has come out, and in recent years on TikTok and Instagram, thrifting has really become hugely, hugely popular, and I get a lot of comments from people saying, aren't you worried that you're not going to be able to find anything good anymore because I'm trying to teach people how to shop? But truly, when it comes to supply and demand, the supply is endless. Like, there's an endless amount of old stuff in this country, in this world. And if you've ever done a Goodwill run, you wind up with a lot of stuff, and it's like, how did I get all of this? So I really think even if the demand increases, there's still an endless supply of incredible pieces of vintage for all of us to find.
You can save a lot of money with DIY and rolling up your own sleeves and going to work yourself. With this next story, you're going to learn about some people who did just that, building a DIY castle.
Mansions and even villas are pretty common in Los Angeles County, but towering above the suburban homes in Glendora is a castle, but not just any castle.
There looks like there's a lot of, I don't know, what do you use? Is this junk, or what do you?
Yeah, scrap. See, there's a Volkswagen motor in there and a toaster. Oh. And
The cobblestone scrap heap fortress is known as Rubel Castle, the dream home of Michael Rubel.
he was a builder since he was a little kid. His father died when he was 6, and he just started building fortresses and digging tunnels.
The multi-story junkyard tree fort in this picture was just one of many janky structures that 10-year-old Michael built in his youth. Scott Rubel, who's Michael's nephew, says his uncle was a half-feral child who grew up working on a citrus orchard.
So Michael wanted to live in the packing house. 10 years later, his dream came true.
When he turned 19, his mother, Dorothy Duell Rubel, bought the packing house and the land around it, partly to keep Michael out of trouble and partly for entertainment value.
His mother was really into partying.
Michael's mom was an actor on Broadway and was well known in the entertainment biz. She constantly hosted movie stars and entertainers in the packing house, which became known as the Tin Palace.
Jack Benny was one of them. Alfred Hitchcock, President Eisenhower was here in 1963.
Here's a funny story about President Eisenhower trying to use the packing house elevator.
Michael pushed the down button and down he went, and then the fuse blew. And Eisenhower got stuck with his head sticking out of the floor.
Over the years, Michael tried his luck in many failed entrepreneurial ventures, including growing eggplants and raising frogs in the old concrete irrigation reservoir on the property.
Michael pulled the plug here, and there was a big spout of water came about a mile down the road, and frogs were falling out of the sky.
When Michael pulled the plug on the reservoir and it fully emptied, he decided to start on his lifelong dream of building a castle and clock tower.
There was a lot of building going on here and no one knew.
Oh yeah, we built for years before the neighbors could see what we were doing.
Working from the bottom of the empty 12-foot reservoir, Michael enlisted the help of artists and his nephew Scott to erect the metal frame which would become the clock tower.
And we put electric winches up in the palm trees and lifted the whole thing up. So it just appeared suddenly. The neighbors didn't know what was going on in here.
Michael had no money, but he had a knack for getting free materials and inspiring young artists to work for him in return for space of their own.
So this was a shared space. So
yeah, there's a lot of art always going on in here. So people had their own motivations for building their own little spaces.
Rock by rock and junk pile by junk pile, Michael and his friends eventually finished the clock tower and the castle in 1986, all without a single building permit from the city.
We had our contentious moments.
Despite some pushback from the city, the mayor eventually issued Michael a proclamation of good community standing, ending years of conflict and endorsing the castle as a local monument.
They fought us because they sort of had to, but on an individual level, they loved us.
Michael Rubel died in 2007. Today, his legacy lives on through the eyes of tourists that get to explore the castle and its many quirks.
You can see all the hard work here, but what you can't see is all the parties, you know, and that's what really built this place, is hundreds of friends.
Well, that's all we have here for this episode of Your Money. Thank you for coming on the road with us to the Minneapolis Home and Remodeling Show. Tune in next week for even more money-saving advice. Until next time, I'm Gordon Severson, helping you save, spend, and invest your money wisely. I'll see you next time.